Commence primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I got a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
An episode, it kind of threw me off a little bit. Like you did a little different Daniel Wingfield that time. Kind of threw me off.
It's like, I'm just a wild card. That's what everyone says when they meet me. Man, that guy's a wild card.
Yeah,
that's verbatim. That's a real quote.
That guy is a wild card. And today's episode 171 of Podcast 2 for 1, youtube.com/2for1 studios, the best place to consume the content. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe and that notification bell. That way, you've done all future episodes of Podcast 2 for 1. Again, youtube.com/2for1 studios. And if you didn't know, and listeners, you probably didn't, we are sponsored by Kapow Comics, located at 4047 East Gill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas. There they have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course, special guest appearances throughout the year.
Kapow.
Yeah, I guess we had like a 2-week break, and my brain just goes off. It's like, oh, you haven't practiced in 2 weeks? You've only done it 170 times.
71, right? This is 71.
Yeah, it's 71. Okay. I was given it's probably less because we've changed our opening every now and then.
It's true. I did host like the first 2, maybe.
I think so. Yeah.
But we didn't even have our spiel at that point. So like those don't.
No, we didn't. Yeah. There was like this little beep, 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 beep. That's how this podcast started. Remember that?
That's right. It was like a R2D2 sign. Yeah. I do remember that. Mm-hmm.
It'll be, I think, 4 years in a couple months. How does that make you feel?
That's silly. That's what I feel like. I think that
makes me very upset.
Very
honestly.
silly. Yes.
Well, listeners, if you didn't know by the thumbnail or the title on your whatever podcast service you're using, we are talking about Oppenheimer today. And Daniel and I had the pleasure of seeing it over the weekend. Where we both synced up and got to go to the movies together. And it was one of my most anticipated movies, just for the fact that it was Christopher Nolan. I wasn't just super interested. I mean, I was interested in the subject material, but like, I wasn't just like, it wasn't like a Tenet or a Dark Knight or something where I was like, I got to know what's going on. It wasn't like a mystery, those kind of things, but it was still an intriguing topic for sure. And I'll say this, Daniel, so far, the movies this year, there's been some good ones.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it is, but it hasn't wowed me this year. And I think the box office is kind of reflecting that. I mean, it feels like last year was bigger box office wise in a lot of ways. And of course, there's standouts like Barbie and Super Mario Brothers and other things like that. But I think I've just been a little underwhelmed overall this year. And I think watching Oppenheimer, I felt good watching it. I felt like, okay, we have a movie that is directed by an auteur, and it feels like there's specific choices, and it's his vision, and everything on the technical side of it across the board was pretty immaculate. And it was just nice. It wasn't, I don't know if it's his best movie. There's probably an argument that it is from some people, but I'll say this, it's like a Spielberg kind of situation, right? Even his worst is probably better than most.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely not his worst at all.
No.
And I think it could be one of his best. You think it's Tenet? Wow. So anyway, I loved it. And it's my number one movie of the year so far, eclipsing Across the Spider-Verse, which I just rewatched again.
Wow. That is impressive just based on Spider-Man property getting beat by a historical drama,
right?
That on paper is kind of wild for Donovan Thompson.
It is wild. I wouldn't have called that last year,
right? But
it's for a very specific reason that you and I will talk about next week when we finally review Across the Spider-Verse.
Yes.
There's a really specific reason, and if it had changed that one thing, I would be singing a different tune, probably.
Okay.
So,
well, that's a little teaser for the audience. That'll be a fun discussion.
It's a little teaser.
Yeah.
So anyway, I loved it. Daniel, what's your thoughts on the movie?
I think I loved it as well. It's not maybe my favorite Nolan film, but in many ways, it may be one of the most impressive. In terms of storytelling and character, I think. I mean, I think you're right. Technically, it's Nolan. Technically it's going to be perfect. Is the assumption in my head is like there's no question that the shots are going to be gorgeous, that the editing is going to be fun and dynamic and pacey and all of these things. But I think what most impresses me about Oppenheimer is that we got this really interesting and nuanced and layered portrayal of our main character, right? Where I feel like the movie did not paint him as a hero. It didn't paint him as a villain either. It just kind of presented this multifaceted, complex person that had a lot of reasons for doing what he did and went through a lot through that process. And on the other side of that came to some other conclusions that at the time were controversial, or maybe to some degree, or maybe still controversial. And so I think what amazes me about this film and what keeps me thinking about it, when I am thinking about it again, is just that like it felt so kind of perfectly balanced, where I don't, like I said, I don't feel like there was any villains in the movie. There weren't any like pure heroes. They were all just humans, and to some degree tasked with a world changing job, and then just watching the ripple effects of them accomplishing that, and just seeing how it changed everyone, how it changed the people that worked on it, like Oppenheimer, how it changed the politicians around it, like or even the military people like Matt Damon. I just feel like I'm just very impressed by that. I think there's an easier way to do this movie is to make Oppenheimer a saint and all his detractors, villains. But I don't, other than Robert Downey Jr.'s character, he might be the only one you might consider just purely antagonistic. But the rest, I just feel like it would be easier to make this movie just veering one side or the other, either painting him as a villain or painting him as a hero for what he did. And I feel like this movie didn't do either, and it really stuck the landing in presenting a very balanced picture of a man. And I think just as a task, as a storyteller, that is really difficult. And I think it was just outstanding. It may be his best writing and like acting, directing. I don't know. But yeah, I think Oppenheimer is fantastic. And even just shows a lot of what we don't get in other Nolan films. There's so much talking and so little action. You know what I'm saying? We aren't getting these big set pieces that Nolan is famous for. Buying a C-130 and blowing it up, or buying rice fields for, like these things that kind of like make the movie feel bigger than life. I feel like all of that was done through dialogue and through character acting. And like that to me is just like, damn, like, yeah, it's just really impressive.
Yeah, no, a few points there. One, Nolan is, I don't think, the best at showcasing like physical action. You can see that a lot through some of the Batman films, and there's some interesting things he does, but I think he does better with like destruction action or
Sure.
some large scale practical things, like you mentioned the plane and Tenet, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And it is quite remarkable the fact that all this is a talking movie. And I think the power of the dialogue, the acting, the editing is next level. And you're right. I think this is his best written film because he's been writing, I believe, the last couple by himself, like Tenet. I think he may have wrote Interstellar. I mean, he's got like, people to help him and stuff, but I think he's credited as writing Interstellar
And Dunkirk, I
and
think, at least.
Dunkirk and Tenet. And this one, like with the Dark Knight trilogy, he had like David S. Goyer and his brother Jonathan, and Jonathan has been in a mix of a lot of them too. And I could be wrong on a few of these, but I'm pretty sure it's close enough. And you're right. I think on the technical level, I remember we walked out of the theater and I said, I don't know if I have the ability to write that kind of movie or not. It just feels like it feels superbly complex, and every word and line, it feels like a knife. You know what I'm saying? It feels like it's like it just feels so precise, surgical almost. And I know it's adapting from a book, so maybe there's some help there. But I don't know. It feels like a daunting task, and you're right. I mean, I'll say this. I think we walked out and also said I see it as a lock for at least nominations: Best Picture, Best Director for Nolan, Best Actor for Cillian Murphy, Best Supporting Actor for Downey Jr. Um, there may be a supporting actress in there for Emily Blunt, maybe just for her one scene. I don't know. She hasn't been nominated for anything, I don't think. So I think it could be like a thing for her there.
Right.
Definitely best editing, potentially best screenplay, maybe a best adapted screenplay, not best screenplay. And then
Sound editing, almost his the
oh,
sound editing on all his films is always so impressive. And this was another one where like the sound of a what are the little ticking like
sure.
radioactivity like monitor things, those would sometimes come in. Sometimes you'd hear like this like ringing noise come in, especially when they were doing kind of those segments after they had built the bomb, and he was like kind of going through some like PTSD, thinking about the people that have been bombed. There's some really great
One of the best
visual
scenes.
and audio things going on
Yeah.
there. Yeah, and let me
They
just
do.
point on that real
Well,
quick is that like one
yeah.
of my favorite things about this, and again, what you would think would be the default mode of telling the story is you show the bombings, right?
I was just fixing to say that, and you
And
never see
you
them at
never
all.
see it, but at the same time, it's so like we're talking about maybe a 2 to 3 minute scene where we're watching Oppenheimer feel kind of a residual PTSD from what he is aware happened with the bombs. And it is
Yeah.
so short, but so effective and communicates everything you need to know about what that character is going through right there. And we don't kind of have this like disaster porn of like bombing a giant city, which is visceral. You know what I mean? Like that's entertaining. There's something that's like you can't look away from that. And I just think it's very assured, confident storytelling. Say no. That's not what this movie's about. This movie's about Oppenheimer and what he went through. And so we're only going to experience kind of his perspective in a lot of this.
No, I can see us writing. I mean, like, we got to show the plane fly over Hiroshima and Nagasaki and drop the bombs, and we got to get
Right.
the phone call and the people. I totally see that conversation happening, but there's a lot of, um, resolve in not doing that. And you're right. I mean, it's just impressive all around. And let's talk a little bit about some of the editing and the structure here, more so the structure.
Yeah.
So the movie kind
Yeah.
of falls into primarily three different time or points in time, a
Yes.
fourth coming in at the very end. But the 3 points in time is, we'll say, the present day, which is like Cillian Murphy being interrogated by
Yeah.
government officials for a security clearance. And then there is that Cillian Murphy, or that Oppenheimer, is telling his story
Right.
leading up to after the bombing. And then there's the future tense, which is still, I would presume, would you say 60s, 70s, maybe? I don't know.
The
when
Robert
it's
Downey
happening.
Jr. timeline.
Yeah, I don't really know when that's
I
happening,
don't-
actually.
I'm not too aware of the timeline, like what decade they were in. Yeah.
Yeah, not either. But that is in we'll say the future tense, right?
Yeah.
And it's the most
I guess
future
maybe the
in the movie.
60s.
Probably the 60s.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, that's in black and white, which you'd really
Yeah.
typically associate with like flashback
Past.
scenes, but
Yeah.
the flash forward scenes are in black and white. And the way he constantly is weaving in between these three
Mhm.
things. I mean, this is the downside of these kind of things, Daniel. These reviews, A, we saw it one time, but B, it's just gonna be hard for me to find some negatives in this and just not talk about how great everything is about it.
Well,
Um,
for what the movie wanted to be, I don't see any flaws.
I
I
don't
mean,
either.
I've seen people mad about like, oh, well, I've seen some brain dead reactions like, oh, I was waiting to see the bombings and I'm mad that I didn't get to see that. But like,
Really, I never heard that.
if you understand, I think the previews did a good job, but like the movie very quickly, I feel like tells you what kind of movie it is within the first, 30 minutes. And I feel like
Sure.
for what this movie is trying to do, it might be flawless. You know what I mean? Like, and like the things that people might find as flaws, you could easily just write off as opinion, right? Like I just feel like I received the exact thematic message and story that Nolan was wanting to give to me, as opposed to something like Tenet, which I did
Sure.
not get the thing he was
Sure.
wanting to get to me. It failed for a lot of reasons. One was the cutting and pacing and storytelling and the audio, but like to me, when I watch this movie, it just feels like almost like Nolan's talking to you. You know what I mean? And like just sharing his thoughts about Oppenheimer, and the amount of research he must have done to be ready for this must have been extensive, and just writing it. But yeah, I just think it's hard for me to say there's a flaw in it because I feel like everything it did on purpose and did it well.
One clear point that one thing to differ here. You mentioned earlier sound was impeccable in this. I think the sound design is yes, and I think his sound design in his movies has been pretty great. His mixing has been problematic in a lot of movies, particularly Tenet. Particularly, like I watched it recently with subtitles, and I was like, man, this does help tremendously for this movie.
I'm sure.
And then, obviously there was kind of the debacle with Bane and The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
The sound mixing there.
Well, I saw an article, I don't know if it's true, I glanced at it, that like he is very much against ADR. He only wants to get sound on set. And that would make sense for the issues that we hear sometimes. Now, maybe it's not true. Maybe that's just like, but like that for one, that almost I would believe if Nolan was kind of a purist in that way. Like, don't fix it in post. It's all got to happen, in camera, whatever. But that would also explain some of the issues that and I will say, like, there were moments
maybe I just don't believe that
where like it was a little muffly, the dialogue, like a little bit,
maybe yeah. I don't know if I believe that, because I think The Dark Knight would have been impossible, because I think I've seen articles on like particularly like Gary Oldman having to re-record his dialogue because of the IMAX cameras. But I could be wrong. Maybe
it's just a preference thing, and it's where like anytime he can do that, he will do it. But obviously some things you can't prevent. It's almost impossible to like completely avoid that.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, again, the technology now I'm assuming he's shooting IMAX film, so the technology now versus was 15 years ago in The Dark Knight, there might be some better sound things that are protecting from the camera to the set. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I just really love the balance of the script and how we're getting information. And another impressive thing in this movie was another example, maybe an older example would be Superman the movie with Richard Donner, is that they cast all the supporting actors with famous people, and the main character is a no-name, being Christopher Reeve. And it's a similarity there, and like it feels like even the most one-line, two-line role is cast with Academy Award-winning or TV headlining actors like Rami Malek for his small brief role. I can't think of the guy's name, but Jack Quaid,
Dennis Quaid's son.
I keep forgetting that. You have Drake, Josh Peck. Dang, I don't know these names. Josh Peck,
David Dastmalchian, who you will recognize from the Suicide Squad movie with James Gunn. He was fantastic. He had a very small role, but very good.
Yeah, he did. And then, I mean, just everything from one of the Safdie brothers to
let's not forget Gary Oldman in his
Gary Oldman
5-minute role as Truman, but
didn't even know he was in the movie.
Show. No.
Yeah, didn't even know he was in it until that scene. I was like, oh, that's Gary Oldman.
And it's wild because that scene is at most 5 minutes, maybe less, and it's so memorable. He just acts his pants off. You know what I mean?
Oh, I mean, everyone's coming in. I can see. Man. Yeah, it's kind of wild. I saw this interview where someone was talking to him because he's doing press rounds because the actors cannot at the moment. And they were like, how does it feel to be at the height of your career and be able to call upon these artists and just for very small bit roles? And he said he's very honored and feels privileged to do it. But I just think that's awesome. And it makes I mean, it's a little distracting sometimes because you're like, that's wild because that actor's doing that. But at the same time, it kind of sometimes takes you a minute to remember, it's Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah. Well, that's
Gary Oldman.
I'm looking at the cast right now. I didn't realize Kenneth Branagh was in it. He was the guy that came over from Germany, or like the physicist.
He said, I'm
not staying, but yes. Yeah, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. They had a
good relationship because of Dunkirk and because of Tenet. But you need to watch Dunkirk. You really do.
I will. Yeah, Matthew Modine was in it. Alden Ehrenreich, who I just so many names that are like
Solo.
Scott Grimes was in it. I didn't realize that. That's funny. Yeah,
crazy. The
there's
cast is
just so
crazy.
many names in here that are just like, yeah, that person headlined multiple projects. That, you know what I mean? That like,
Yeah.
and I do think it's like, even, the anecdote that Matt Damon has been consistently telling, that he has been taking a break from acting, and the deal was unless Nolan calls.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I think there's just no one has that pull right now. I mean, like, I love Spielberg, but I don't think he could do this as easily as Nolan does. You know what I'm saying? Just in terms of being in a movie that just feels like art. And I will say that, like, Nolan's films, for even the flawed ones, they feel like a very specific vision, a very specific voice, and going for something intentional. Whether it lands that or not is a different question. But I think when you work with it, it really is like, I mean, I guess probably Wes Anderson could be thrown in there in terms of like current auteurs, where like you can't miss their style when you see it. It's
Him and
impossible to not
Fincher.
know it's that. Yeah, Fincher's
Yeah.
a great one too. Yeah, so I think it makes sense, and like I would probably be right there with them. I mean, like, if Nolan, I don't care if you're just going to be the busboy in a
Yeah.
waiting table. Is like, it's fucking Christopher Nolan. You're going to
Yeah,
get
if no-
nominated. You're
yeah.
going to be in a movie that's nominated for multiple Oscars and will likely win a few. I mean, like,
Yep.
no one's going to say no to that.
It is interesting.
And I'll say, like, Robert Downey Jr., like, he's almost done nothing since Avengers, and then he comes out with this, and you're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
he can act outside of Tony Stark, and he can do a
Yeah.
fucking phenomenal job.
Yeah, well, he's done The Judge, I believe, and he's done Doolittle. Maybe not The Judge, but he's done Doolittle.
Yeah,
And
Doolittle was-
I haven't seen, sadly.
Yeah, he
but
hasn't done a lot, that's for sure.
he,
since
he hasn't needed to
No.
either.
That's true.
But yes, you're right. I think it's still, this is his time to be nominated for Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, 100%.
Yes.
And Cillian Murphy will be nominated for Best Actor. There's just no ifs and or buts about it.
No.
And I think this is Nolan's year. This is his year to win Best Director. I haven't seen a movie yet that comes close to it.
He hasn't
Even
won
just
that
like
yet?
on the. No, he's been nominated. He's been nominated for a couple things.
It's odd.
But he hasn't been nominated. I think he was nominated for Dunkirk, which was his first director nomination.
Oh, okay.
But he didn't win it. So, thinking about Spielberg and Nolan real quick, one difference is Spielberg, he managed to make like worldwide phenomenon IPs consistently. Like he made E.T. become this phenomenon, Close Encounters phenomenon, Jaws phenomenon,
Yep.
Jurassic Park. I mean,
Indiana
like he
Jones.
just kind of kept Indiana Jones. You're right, damn. He just kind of kept He kind of kept hitting those he created IPs.
He
Nolan-
defined an era of movies for like
yeah.
Americans.
He
worldwide.
started the blockbuster being Jaws. Jaws was the first considered blockbuster, right? So I just what's interesting about the comparison between Spielberg and Nolan feels like his movies always hit around $600 to $800 million, but they're always original ideas for the most part, and they're always, besides The Dark Knight, of course, in those movies, they're always I don't know, they don't feel as movies for everyone, and that probably is his barrier. Where E.T. feels like it could reach 5-year-old to a 70-year-old, and Jurassic Park the same, Indiana Jones the same.
Yeah.
And I wonder,
Spielberg's movies tend to have a younger audience pull, which makes a lot of sense especially when you watch like his most recent movie and kind of understand. Was it the Feldmans or what that movie was?
The Fablemans.
Fablemans, right? Steven Spielberg Stand By Me. He had a lot of stuff happen to him as a kid that really influenced him and made him want to make movies that like appeal to kids too.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I agree with you. There is something about that makes them more mass marketable. And more like they can make toys.
Timeless.
Make toys
Make
and
toys.
make merchandising. How are you gonna make merchandising on Oppenheimer? Now, Dark Knight, sure, but the rest, no one wants an Inception doll or something like that. You know what I mean?
I might actually give me that. Leo.
I do want the quarter. That'd be
the
cool.
quarter.
The top.
I would love the top. I'm sure. Cool. I know you could get. I know you could get that somewhere
on Etsy replicas. Easily.
Oh, probably. But yeah, that's the thing is that Spielberg was creating massive appeal IPs every time.
Yes.
And so I think that's the only. I almost, the question I'm trying to get at is who is the best director of all time? My answer is probably Spielberg because of that reach. But Nolan is like he I saw this Rotten Tomatoes thing the other day. It was like, who's the top 25 best filmmakers in the last 25 years, or not top 25, who's the best in the last 25,
Yeah.
like got their start in the last 25 years.
Yeah.
Spielberg's been doing this for a long time, right?
Yeah.
And Nolan's got to start in the last 25 years with Memento,
Yeah.
or with Following, sorry. And so he's only made like 9 or 10 movies,
Right.
which is a lot, but
Right.
compared to like Spielberg's 30,
Yeah.
you
No.
know.
Right.
So it's like,
Yeah.
what's the conversation at the end of their careers, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on what your measuring stick is. Are we measuring
Sure.
it by the butts in the seats and the tickets sold? Or are we measuring it by, like you said, cultural impact? Like what movies did Spielberg make that are still relevant in like pop culture today, which are
Well,
almost all of them.
by all those measurements, Spielberg is going to win. He's got more director
But
nominations.
if you might change the metrics to artistic intent and execution. Or, here's the thing. I feel like Nolan makes movies more for people that are like cinephiles than Spielberg does. Spielberg makes movies for everybody. And I think that's great. We need movies for everybody. I feel like Nolan's films are made so that the more you know about the craft, the more you appreciate it. You know what I'm saying? In a way where it's just like you're watching a master class in everything that they tried to teach you in film school. This is someone who's doing it. And I guess, to me, you're right. They are kind of going for different. I mean, I don't think Nolan's considering children when he's writing these movies, and nor should he for these kind of films. But, it's like.
There's no answer here. I think it's
interesting. I mean, it's an interesting conversation. Like you said, I think it's just, it depends on what measuring stick you want to use. You know what I'm saying? Like, you might argue that, yes, Nolan's catalog is smaller, but maybe he's taken more risks than Spielberg ever has, and a lot of those have paid off. And there's something worthy of that, you might say, in just terms of like that takes artistic guts in a way that maybe some of Spielberg's didn't as much, just because they were a little more cookie cutter, even just in terms of like editing and pacing, right? Like Nolan takes a lot of risks in how he presents the story, and like. Think of The Prestige, which also has multiple timelines happening at the same time, or Inception, which is like maybe Inception's not the most riskiest, but like Tenet is a great example of it not working. You know what I mean, in my opinion. But like he's always trying to kind of push a boundary, either technically or artistically. I mean, has a C-130 ever been blown up for a movie before? I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, I do feel like Nolan is trying to push the medium maybe in just ways that he thinks are cool, rather in ways that the medium's already going, if that makes sense.
He's trying to push and preserve at the same time.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That's a great way to put it, I think. It's interesting. One thing about Nolan, maybe this movie aside, is that he is a hopeful storyteller. I feel like most of his movies have a hopeful ending. Prestige, maybe not. Insomnia, maybe.
Yeah, it depends on who you're rooting for in Prestige.
Sure, yeah. And then I can't remember, where did Bruce lay on that? Was Bruce like
The Prestige?
Yeah, he was the protagonist.
We never broke that down, did we?
Yeah, we did. We have a whole episode.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. Actually, I think I was the only one that was kind of more sympathetic toward Christian. Y'all were like more sympathetic to Hugh Jackman by the end, and I was like, I kind of feel a little bit more like Christian Bale like has, like room to be considered like maybe like we are like, what's the audience perspective? Are we with Hugh Jackman and losing, or are we with Christian Bale while he's winning? You know what I mean? Because both happened at the same time.
Right. I couldn't remember what the thing was, but me and Bruce were right, and you're wrong. Yeah, that's what happened. Right. Yeah. Okay, so so that's Following. Not hopeful, I don't think. Memento, it's kind of like this blind.
He finds
optimism.
The killer. He achieves his objective. I don't know if I'm like feeling great about the world after that.
Well, at the Memento, it's like he learns that he is in a perpetual cycle that he's created, and that there is no end to it, and that will create his own John Doe next kind of thing. So I don't know about that one, but anyway, I mean, I feel like it's always more hopeful. Oppenheimer wasn't so much hopeful at the end.
There was
some justice involved.
Yes, there was some justice, and that was the most like you felt like, because like, the last third of the movie is essentially like Oppenheimer's downfall, right? Like that's what is mostly happening, and it gave you a moment where it felt like it you know, it was really even interesting where he like when he at that moment where they were like, why are you not fighting? And he's like, why are you just taking this on the chin and just letting it happen to you? And he wouldn't answer. And then someone was like, you're doing this because you want it to absolve you. You like want this, you almost like want this punishment because you feel guilty. And so you feel like if you're punished, you'll actually feel better or something like that. And I think from Oppenheimer's perspective, he does feel a little bit redeemed at the end of the movie, right? He feels like he's found kind of a new peace or a new like to me it felt like he had kind of a little bit made peace with who he was and his role in all this. And so I think like for him as a character, that's what I felt from it, was just kind of like him smiling and him, you know, Robert Downey Jr. failing and all that stuff. Like I that was what I was feeling. And so like,
to be fair, the last scene they show is not the last scene that takes place. You know what I'm saying?
No, it's not. But I feel like that's still what the movie leaves us with. Is that
no, I know. But I'm saying like, well, he's not smiling at the end when the camera cuts. He's like thinking about. Well, he's thinking about destroying the world. Like he destroyed the world, and it's a metaphor, right? We started a chain. I'm afraid we started a chain reaction, like we really did. And he's right. The world, there's a world before the testing at the Trinity site or the dropping of the bombs in Japan. There's a world after, and they definitely started a chain reaction. And every day we feel effects of those decisions in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
There's conversations every day in the news that reference decisions that Oppenheimer and those team of scientists made almost 100 years ago.
Sure.
I don't know. It's interesting. I need to watch it about 20 more times. And then, but I do love it. Last question I have for you, though, is what is your favorite movie you've seen this year? And favorite and best are different.
I mean, honestly, I haven't seen a lot this year. I've seen 40 minutes of Indiana Jones 5.
It's true. I forgot you haven't finished it yet.
No. Fucking fire alarms, man. I've seen Oppenheimer.
You've seen The Flash?
Okay, yes, sure. The Flash. Was there another? Was Ant-Man this year?
It was.
That's weird.
You've seen Guardians 3?
Guardians 3. Okay. So like all the Marvel movies in Oppenheimer.
Wow, you haven't seen much actually.
I know.
I've seen like 26 movies this year. I've been doing better this year than I normally. Yeah, I've done better this year than I have in normally I'm catching them later, but I've done a good job watching movies at home this year. And
that's part of it is like I go to the theater less, so I'm usually waiting for things to come to VOD for more stuff. It's easily the best movie I've seen this year. But
I was wondering,
looking at the competition,
it's
just like
right. It's the baby shower scene from The Flash. Nothing beats that, right?
No, I mean it's like Oppenheimer and like way the fuck down here is Guardians 3. That's still a good movie, but it's still like way the fuck down from Oppenheimer. Wow. You know,
I'm surprised to kind of hear that. I didn't really know how you felt coming out of the movie, but I didn't feel like it blew you away or anything. I felt like I was kind of on a high. Yeah, it
was good. It wasn't my favorite Guardians, and I still stand by that. And there's something about not ending the trilogy on the highest point of the trilogy that just feels like a little bit of a missed target. Yeah. But other than that, it's a great film. But I mean,
I watched it recently too.
Again. Oppenheimer will be studied in film schools forever. Potentially, you know what I mean? Right. There's just a different level of craft going on here, and like
maybe we're also blindsided by the fact that this year's movies aren't as good as they could have been. I don't know. I mean, to be fair, again,
and here's the thing: I haven't seen Barbie. I have a very good feeling I'm going to really like Barbie.
I'm going to like Barbie. I'm disappointed we didn't do Barbie.
That one I imagine might be right under Oppenheimer. Honestly, I could see that one being my second one. I'm trying to think what other movies are coming out this year that are like of note. Or like,
I mean, we've hit the peak already, but Spider-Verse is kind of one of the bigger ones this year. Mission Impossible has got like a high score, but I don't see you liking that movie.
I'm not really your Impossible guy.
Yeah, it's not really your franchise.
It's not.
And I've got issues.
The Creator is supposed to come out this year. That looks interesting.
I'm super intrigued by that. I don't know if Dune 2 might be pushed back. Highly
That's
possible.
Supposed to come out this year.
supposed to come out in like
Oh,
October,
shit.
November. Yeah.
If Dune 2 came out this year, that I could see that giving Oppenheimer a run for its money,
Yeah.
depending. I mean, this Denis Villeneuve. I mean, if anyone's going to kind of
He's in my top
measure up a
five.
little bit, Denny's going to be there. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, like
Oh, and Fincher's
Death on the
movie coming
Nile,
this
I
year
guess. Is
on
that coming
Netflix, I
out?
believe.
What is?
A new serial killer Fincher movie comes out on Netflix this fall, I believe.
Oh,
I think it's called The
interesting.
Killer. I think it's called The Killer.
Should
So
have
that's
found a more creative name, but that's fine.
yeah, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, the Haunted
No,
Mansion, but yeah, you,
I
yeah.
do want to see TMNT. I'm seeing that pretty soon, I believe. Blue
Talk to Me
Beetle, I'm
is
seeing it
getting like
next week.
really good reviews.
I saw it. I saw it Sunday.
Oh, what do you think? What do you think?
You know, solid, solid movie. I have more fun with Scream 6 because I'm a big Scream guy.
Sure.
Or is it Scream 5? It was Scream 6. It was Scream 6. But it was like it's one of those things like when you see the idea, you're like, damn, that's such a good, simple idea. And it always kind of irritates you. You're
Well,
like, man, why
and
didn't I think of
oftentimes
that?
that's the best horror films,
It
right?
is.
It's the
It's
simple
solid, dude.
ideas.
They announced a sequel yesterday called Talk to Me. And
Of course.
I thought it was a good horror film. I mean, I will definitely probably watch it again at least one more time, but it was solid, dude. It's got some good stuff in it.
Mm.
Yeah. You haven't seen 65 this year with Adam Driver. It's okay. It's
No, I haven't.
interesting. Of course, Creed 3 came out. It's okay, even though people really love it. I thought it was okay. Yeah, I mean, this year feels kind of weird to me.
My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 is coming out this year, so that
Damn,
maybe
you're right, dude. You're right.
that's the lock.
We also have supposedly Aquaman at the end of the year, which that's not going to be in my top 10.
At this
top
point, does
10.
anyone actually want to see that movie? Like, I feel like
It made $1 billion. The last one is the highest grossing DC and or Warner Brothers movie of all time.
It's very sad.
Doesn't that make you sad?
Yes, it does. Makes
Hey, those last 30 minutes are a banger. It's a banger, but it's not like those other 2 hours are. You know what I mean? Like it's just and it's visually a banger. I mean, the whole movie is just like I need to write a visual essay on that movie and what's weird with it and what's crazy about it. Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, this year's a weird year for movies. I kind of thought I thought this would be like the first true year post pandemic. Like it felt like we were back and the box office is bigger than it has been, like in game levels, but everything is kind of petering off and like Mission Impossible only making 500 million is just, it's astounding to me. And those have been like a lock for 700 million. Transformers only making 400 million, which I did enjoy quite a bit actually. I really liked them a lot.
You did. I knew you said that. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, man. It's a weird year. We got a few stragglers left, but I don't know. Maybe next year will be better. I really want you to watch Across the Spider-Verse for obvious reasons, but I watched it. I finished it again last night, and I was just like, visually, this thing is.
It should win every award for animated movies, probably, like in just terms of animation style and stuff.
It's just like I don't know how it's just it's just fun watching it, just even for that part of it, and it's got good other stuff too. I just got one problem with it. And you'll find out very soon, Daniel. How can listeners write into us?
Listeners, you can write into bit.ly/2for1mail and let us know what you thought of Oppenheimer. Are you as much of a fan as we are and want to see, more of this from Nolan? Or do you think there was something lacking? Do you think you wanted something more from the film? Let us know at bit.ly/2for1mail.
And if you can't hit us up at our bill, you can always find us in the comment section below. Again, youtube.com/2for1studios, the best place to consume all the content. Daniel, we did it. Oppenheimer. Hopefully next week we can hit Spider-Verse, and then hopefully we can find Bruce back on a film discussion. We have Ahsoka around the corner. Maybe Indiana Jones will come out at some point. There's going to be things to talk about relatively soon. We also have the Marvels coming out at some point. Are you excited for that movie at all?
To be honest, I'm not really excited for anything Marvel right now. There's very few projects on the horizon that I'm like, ooh, yeah. I mean, Loki too, but mainly because I know that the Tom Hiddleston and Why can't I think of the funny
Owen
blonde guys?
Wilson.
Their dynamic is amazing. They have great chemistry, and I know that at the very least that will be enough to watch it for me. They're
may be
them
right, maybe.
acting together and being together. But other than that, like
I want to. I want to
probably
be
will
hyped
see
for
them.
Cap 4. Yeah.
I mean, until I see something, I mean, they're gonna have to have a good ass trailer. You know what I mean? Like for me to be hyped, I'll still go see it, but like
Yeah, you
for me
will.
to be like counting the days and like that kind of thing. I mean, they got an uphill battle, and I'm not the only one. I know that. So like,
Yeah.
they got an uphill battle right now.
Yeah. I was kind of the days down for Guardians 3, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
The
for
trailers
sure.
were incredible.
And here's the thing. I mean, I was like, Secret Wars did this. The blood is on Secret Wars' hands in some ways.
Secret Invasion.
Secret Invasion. I'm sorry. I mean, like, it zapped all hope and like optimism I had for future Marvel projects because of how much money and like energy they spent on this and how just like underwhelmingly bad it was. Just even in terms of like artistic vision. It was just like, this was just, so whoever had the idea should be fired. Like if anyone thought, yes, this is a great idea for a great TV show, and I'm being hyperbolic, right? And I know that like, some of this may be the fact that we've had mini rooms and like we're getting less good writing topic. In fact, our friend of the show, Jess Carson, was a writer on The Flash and is, currently not employed because she's a WJ writer, made a really good post on Facebook recently. I don't know if you saw it, that kind of like contextualized what it's like to be on a set as a writer. And it's like, when you think, it's like you write the perfect script and then the next day the production says, well, we don't have the lead actor for as much time anymore, so rewrite the script where it's not around the lead actor and then do all this. So it's like so many of the times, like the scripts that eventually get on screen are constrained by all these like, there was an example where it's like, the director found a new location and really everyone wants to use it, but now you have to take 3 scenes you already had and I'll write them into that location and make it feel natural. You know what I mean? It's just like things that are just like, that just get in the way of good storytelling because you have to follow the rules and there's people above you that says, no, now do this, or like, you know what I mean? Like the Secret Invasion felt like that to me. Secret Invasion felt like this was not a writers are in charge show. This is, we have a budget, we have locations, we have actors, write us something within the confines of that.
We haven't obscene. I mean, look at the budget, what, 220 or 212? Oppenheimer was, I think, 100 million, 130 million.
Do you think maybe Sam got like 50 of that? I don't know. Like, where does it all go? I mean, he's getting old. They can't recast him. If he says, I want 50 million, what are you going to do? I
don't know.
Or 20 million even.
If it was that much, we would find out about it. That's a lot.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
Because he would be in like the top paid actors of the year kind of thing. 20 million's a lot of money for an actor for a project. But I don't know. I mean, but look at that. It's like 3-hour Oppenheimer movie. And then you look at 45-minute,
It just screams of like organizational flaws. It screams of like, again, it feels like, and maybe that's like when we talk about like shows that have poor writing, we're just, maybe what we should be saying is shows that have poor creative management, because there probably were great writers on there that were confined in these tiny little boxes and said, oh, you only write this scene with this character and that character, and we only have this character for one day, so it has to be they have to have 2 lines, then we gotta get, you know what I mean, like this kind of level where it's like the script isn't the god of this production. The god is the production manager and and like making sure everything hits whatever. And it's like, what I want Marvel to do is write fucking amazing scripts and then do everything you can to make those scripts reality. Not take really good scripts and say, okay, well, we got to confine this into like these really silly boxes of production that just detracts from the quality of the show. Because that's what Secret Invasion felt like to me.
I agree. There is a shining knight on the corner. This last thing I'll say is that's Deadpool 3 with Hugh Jackman returning.
Absolutely.
As the Wolverine.
Now it feels,
but that's not because
it's the MCU. Feel like Marvel.
It's because it's Hugh Jackman coming back and Ryan Reynolds
exactly,
Deadpool.
And the hope of the story, right? Like seeing the 20th Century Fox ruins. I can't wait
That
how meta
alone,
this.
I
I mean,
can't- I
is the
can't-
plot of this movie very well could be 20th Century Fox going out of business, and because Deadpool is aware of that, he's trying to get all the heroes to go to Marvel, and he's like trying to get them over to the Marvel universe
Yeah.
because their universe is dying because Fox went out of business. Like, I would not be surprised if that's just the plot, and I think it would work. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's something to do with the Fox versus dying, and they've got to jump ship or something.
And they're
It's a-
and,
it's a-
then, and then by the end they're gonna bring them, at least some of them, over to Marvel.
Yeah.
Probably.
There's heavy rumors that Mobius, which is Owen Wilson's character from Loki, will be in it. So you know,
at least a cameo. I mean, he only needs like a 30-second shot just to do something that would be funny, probably too.
yeah. So I mean, you know, that's we'll see. And they had to stop production because of the strikes and stuff. And so who knows when this stuff is coming out? But they've always got some carrot to dangle in front of me.
You're right. You're right.
And I'm curious.
I'm very curious, and that's what I am about most of Marvel at this point. I'm curious. I'm not out when we're talking about mainline Marvel. I'm not optimistic, and I want.
You know
to
what I am excited about?
It's
You know
sad.
what I would probably trade every Marvel property. I don't know. That's in production. We'll say that's in production, not Secret Wars, not or Secret or whatever. Not those big ones where my boy Toby might come back again.
Right.
But I would trade all the ones in production for Superman Legacy today.
Yeah,
100%.
or the Brave and the Bold. Yep.
Maybe not Brave and the Bold because Andy Muschietti is kind of sour. Like I was all for it until the interview started coming out, and then I think his interview soured me. Like I can forgive the visual effects because he can't literally go flip a switch on and turn those make them good. Like he's got powers that be that's going to stop him from saying, "Hey, that's shit. We can't spend any more money or whatever." Blah blah blah.
Yeah,
I can't forgive some of the comments. I can't forgive him playing ball too much. I mean, like, oh, we decided that was how we wanted to look, and again, I think he might be talking about the Corona Bowl, but that and then the Michael Keaton Batman quitting crime because he killed somebody, trash. And then in retrospect, looking at Ben Affleck's suit
is bad. Yeah,
is bad.
I'm just hoping that James Gunn is got his hands all over that production. That's the to a degree. At the end of the day, I mean, probably not that many people were optimistic when the Rousseau brothers got hired. But it was Kevin Feige that made sure those were what they were.
To be fair, the Michael Keaton stuff when he was in the suit, or just in general, I mean, Michael Keaton killed it, and like seeing that Batman and like that was great. Like he did a good job with that. So, I was pretty excited. I'm like probably 10% less excited, but yeah, Superman Legacy. That's the one I want tomorrow.
But to your point, I'm more excited for DC right now, just to see what they do.
Though, Daniel,
just to see what they do.
Almost always have been.
I have
like
never.
I've almost always revisited those movies almost more than the Marvel.
Right.
Maybe not. I don't know, but like I just have a stronger connection besides Spider-Man. A stronger connection to DC,
right?
Because of Batman, Superman, Green Lantern, Flash, all those guys, and I'm always waiting for them to knock it out of the park, and they haven't. And they have in some ways. Suicide Squad.
Not since Dark Knight. Suicide Squad. That's 3. That's weird.
No, it's the second one. I was just saying.
Okay. Well, Birds of Prey was the other one that's kind of like.
Oh yeah. Anyway, we're over time.
Yeah. Yep.
My name is Donovan Thompson.
I am Daniel Wingfield,
and we have spoken.